Sometimes the house seems to speak. I think it's my mum, if I'm honest, as this was her house before me, and often at night I can hear her moving about between dreams. I think I hear her sighing the pipes, or perhaps when the fridge begins its hummed cycle. There is a sense or trace of her speaking or instructing me wordlessly. As the shower starts, she's surprised by the sudden song of the water, or as something clicks, machines murmur, and when she asks them to stop, they comply. She clearly surveys what I've done under the solitude I have suffered, and not just under COVID, but as David, in fact, since her death. Things are not as they were, and certainly not as clean as she wanted. As the kettle's lime scale boils, my mum's tutting, which supernaturally I expect. The garden is now overgrown, as I can't tell a weed from a flower. But in all this light and strange shadow, I imagine her still, sat outside. The garden was precise under her, another world part remembered, and while she's still with me in this hour of need, truth takes sides. As even the trees seem to mourn, having become their own deformations, parodies almost of the tight-clipped shapes she'd construct, while said weeds write a warped manuscript, Dead Sea Scrolls for dry flowers, who strain to stay upright amidst the tangle of thorns and sun dust. As the selfsame sun stares at me, I know it is my mother's shadow I'm seeking, mowing the lawn that's now tousled, as thick as my hair, wildness-shaped. And I know at once what this is, my own tiny city, peopled of course by my parents, but by my friends also, and those I truly loved, each prized face. It would seem that the house has become an act of time travel, a bungalow aiming higher as it tries to retrieve what love shared, as well as a portal, of course, to former states of renewal, as memory bypasses the borders of each previous place that housed care. For at the age I am now, once again, I am 7, on a similar street in the suburbs, and with a bowl of light cupped by leaves. This is where I roamed through lost parks, or frittered the day away on soft pavement, that in my dream becomes Dala's. As my mother made me a sandwich, immediately I gain that sensation, and through time's melting clock, taste the cheese. I also recognise that as I sit writing this, I am conjuring ghosts to chase comfort. On these perfect days of inaction, I am trying to revive some lost truth. For in fact, I am bewildered and numbed by all of the things that have happened, as after enjoying it for years, sci-fi is playing across a Wi-Fi'd realm like hi-fi. It's become an unbelievable world, part contrived, not Soylent Green, Soylent Yellow, as fears start to ripen and the flowers fall or fail on the vine. J.G. Ballard was right. The Holocaust starts in a hedgerow, as I can feel the undergrowth thick beneath me, a serpent of sorts made from carpet, as an older earth seeks revival, and there is war in my small peace of mind. When the heat is pale late at night, I start to commune with the spiders. I hear the soft collect of their movements as they emerge to inspect all that is. Spiders are policemen of the house, as we know, gathering up insect information. But in America at least, degradation of this protective force has been shown. The police have become murderers. What of ours? For spiders are there in the daylight, biding their time by the skirting to lift and to line wall and floor. Arachnids hide in plain sight, agents of both control and oppression. Automatons metamorphosing, and in the rages to come, they'll break doors. So this is my SOS. Before the walls come to get me. My own scene of solitude starting. As the actual doors are flung open, I no longer know how to be. The world has been turned, something seems to have slipped on the axis, and the balance of power has been wrested away from our hands. No one's free. The real men in masks are the ones we see every evening. Ministerial broadcasts that attempt to keep us all behind lines. They certainly want us forced within hours, that is, until they choose to release us, as all of the desperate and chronic threaten to wilt or wail, health defiled. And so they rush us back onto trains as they did in a not-so-different country not so long ago, to be shrouded under COVID's cloud and their thrones, or that's what I think anyway. As in fact does my mother, as she looks in from the garden while I sit and watch the evening news in half light. I'm shielding my eyes from the glare of the fat and full horror, moving from deaths to deception to a future that mars each stormed line. We agree more now than we did, especially when my dead dad also joins us. Dad has to journey in further, as they had been divorced in life for some time. And my dad died years ago, more than half of my lifespan. Now just the thought of that brings a silence and a still alarming chill to warm nights. It's the science fiction again, as ghosts characterize visitation, and the lost become elders from a time and civilization that even the antique stars have forgotten and no longer quite know how to define. I call up my friend Anthony, and we both compare the day's actions. Meanwhile, by the window, my mum and dad argue on. She would have seen through Boris. He would have been her MP2 here in Uxbridge. She would have called him a bastard and put a fucking Barry Manilow on. My dad would have called him that too, and my dad lived through the Nazis. He knew how this happens, and how fragile it is, our prized real. As the long-established dead, they now speak a quite different language. They can hear the wind as it whispers and see the white ink of moonlight pass the pen across darkness to value and sign fate's last deal. They hear the frequency shift, as it was the turning of dials that released them. My father's eyes were dark mirrors at the moment he died to see this. My mother near sung to the soothing music of morphine. They at least were delivered from this strange semblance of life, this wronged kiss. Of course, I speak to other friends too, when they have time to move beyond their caged children, who, far from tame in their houses, are in a feral wilderness of their own, encamped not in fields, but with patios or perhaps window boxes, screaming out for inclusion in a cartoon of life they've not known. But then none of us know where to seek, or to source this conclusion. A solitude, when it strikes you, can still be within company. There is nothing more lonely, perhaps, than a frightened thought, let's be honest. That sound and bite can infect you, as thought is not virus-free. There is no vaccine for fear, and there never will be. They know that too as they steer us away from the shore into sea, which gathers now on dry land and across long-dried houses, which are tidier than mine, and are islands which can never become paradise. For our homes too can scratch if we grow tired of them. Suddenly towels can coarsen and a shelf fall down. A pipe bursts. It is an uneasy alliance at best as we look to them to protect us. But as soon as we take them for granted, then they make a full demand for their worth. For if we become bored of our walls, then we become bored of ourselves. Walls are mirrors, reflecting all of our behaviour through shadow and absorbing each image so that over time we grow different without seeing the paint and pain make their claims. Each house has a life which echoes that of its owner, just as dogs are seen to, or couples, of course, over time. A tall house seems to stoop with a man who has been 6 foot or over, or perhaps it closes in for the shorter, becoming a kind of cave in design. Mine would be a cupboard, I'm sure, as I am the kind of height that's rejected. Online dating sites win me favour until women ask my full scale. When I say 5'4", I am blocked, and this is by women in their 40s, who should clearly know better, but whose disconnect sees me fail. We're all the same height lying down, my dad said. He also said this in life, and he was no taller. My mother was shorter, but still she also laughs at his joke. She was so much larger in life, and is large in death. I can't really hear them, of course, but I can still imagine, and as I do so, I am writing their separate sounds in my head. It's the time travel again, back to when we were different, back to when those we have lost were still with us and had no notion at all of the dead. So when we do emerge, what will be? I've certainly had my confidence shattered. As we rise up from our Orwell, we'll be like the prisoners at the gates who step back into the world and cross the street to find waiting some likely lad or a girlfriend to drive us straight back to love's place. But how can we return? Surely we'll want to stay outside now in summer. Across the replenished fields of contagion, we'll rub up like seals happily. Or perhaps we will more likely circle and stalk like two jungle cats, wild and wary. Or like those overweighted wrestlers, sizing up their opponent as they form a series of lunges and then belly flop down in defeat. What else will occur as 6 people go out to play with a referee their part games of 5-a-side football, but only against themselves, while avoiding another team in full conflict 2 football-booted feet away on the field? Or what about the couples in restaurants sat, as if they were at Terence Rattigan's separate tables, signalling to the waiter in a kind of desperate semaphore what they need? Corona's a metaphor there, and a metamorphosis, as silent couples mouth and seek solace in the sanctioned distance, while eager lovers strap on their laptops to bump and cavort and screw screens. It's been so long since I touched, or had anyone touch me. I feel as if I become untouchable also, what with the weight I've put on. I haven't walked as I could. Some saw Corona as training, drinking it down, Kia Ora or Ribena perhaps, to grow strong. I used to like to touch a woman like Braille, reading her through love-making, but now with such distance my former perfect eyesight will fail. I had 20/20 vision before, but in 2020 things clouded. We were blinded first to all reason and then it seems to the world. Each sourced event stunned as the past we'd shared was re-virgined, and the conquests we'd looked for and tried to make were curtailed. You might say that I'm calling out on all fronts, as my scene in Solitude sends its signal. If no light is flashing, then perhaps these words are by day. I am reaching out through my screen, which I truly doubt will be lifted, to broadcast to the nation, or to one street as nation, in this my individual's parade. For we are all countries now, as those who rule can't care for us. They have secrecies to be sanctioned and power plays to rewrite. Unelected men auteur us and are directing us now. This is theatre, and while the text is improvised, the construction behind what is said is not right. In darkness we are sliding now into play, for which there will be no cheap tickets. In point of fact, we'll be paying for this show of ourselves endlessly. The surrounding sounds prompt us all, for when dogs bark, it's a warning. As is bird song, cats crying, each creature warns ceaselessly. Each has sung to us from the start. They knew that we would need to start over, but for centuries we've ignored them, and yet their insistence has grown all the same. One day soon then, a new film. A true Planet of the Apes, Worms Uprising, or Planet of the Cats and Cockroaches, or Planet of the Dolphins, perhaps. Some old other race, with more rights and claim to the world stage, which we have smeared with foul language and ever fouler action, of course. I see the scenes now stack up, as the dead commune with the ravens, and in which the fish now resurface and the birds swoop to force us down to the floor. These won't be scenes that I write, but my parents, it would seem, know the author. He's behind the dark. Peel the daylight and you'll hear that awful laugh of foresight. It's alarming what strikes when you get to observe your own drama. Suddenly the day is a dream as we become our own understudies, relearning the lines and cues that remind us of what we once thought to do with our life. The previous show has been stopped. That first run has ended. Now it seems we're preparing for a closing down and the chaos of a harrowing opening night, whose flashing red spotlight seeks to accuse as well as grant focus. As I applaud the dead who've moved downstage and prepare to step out, fear feels bright.